big day. We're finally done with the Super GT front end on the 350Z. No more sanding, thank God. Actually, no, I'm lying. There is a little bit more sanding I gotta do because there's a little bit of overlap between the clear coats. And I was trying to blend that, but there's still a visible line that I gotta try and polish out. So a little bit more sanding. But other than that, everything went so much better than it has before. The painting, the front bumper came out a lot smoother because I did a lot more research on what was causing the little fisheyes or solvent pop that was in my clear coat. And it turns out a lot of people were not explaining it, I don't know if I want to say correctly, but a lot of people said that solvent pop is caused by not waiting long enough between your coats of paint for the solvents and everything to evaporate. And so I was waiting, you know, the data sheets on the paint says to wait 10 to 15 minutes between coats. I was waiting the 15 minutes and it was still happening. But it turns out that that wasn't explained in a way that made sense for my case. So I read on a forum from like 2004 of this guy that was having some similar issues with his clear coat, and this other painter guy told him that it was because he was throwing too much paint on too quickly, and that just popped in my head like, oh my God, that's got to be my problem, because I've had that similar issue with like just spray painting stuff. And so I checked the settings on my gun, and pretty much every YouTube video you'll watch says crank the gun wide open and, you know, 50 to 80% overlap. That doesn't work for everybody. And a lot of the guys would also say that each case is different and every painter is different. This is one of those cases because that did not work at all for me. Apparently I'm just way too slow on my passes to where I was like just caking on the paint, and that's what I thought was interesting because I didn't get any runs really. I only got like 1 or 2 runs in the whole car, but for the amount of paint that I was throwing on there, like I would have expected a lot more runs or something like that. But I cranked the gun down practically closed, so just like 1 turn open on the fluid feed, and that would make the first coat really blotchy. But that's kind of what you want, because you want the first coat to just act like the glue for the next coats. And as you can see on the front bumper, that worked a million times better. So I went from there and tried painting the fenders. I didn't take them off. I just wanted, because it was just the front like 5 or 6 inches of the fenders that had Bondo on them. And I tried blending that. Never blended anything before. Didn't come out great, but you probably can't tell from where you're sitting, so it's fine. Another thing that I learned was when you're using expanding foam to like make a shape for like fiberglass, the way you do that also has a lot to do with how well it comes out. For example, on the right side, which is my like experiment side, like I was just, you know, like you do in construction, just filling gaps, just like blasting out the foam. That's the opposite of what you want to do if you're trying to get a consistent surface to lay fiberglass on. So on the left side, I learned that you're supposed to go to where like the foam is just barely coming out of the can, and you're supposed to just weave it back and forth in like really, really tight zigzags. And that, when it expands, creates a much denser, uniform surface for you to sand and carve and get your shape out of. So that's all going to be in the video for this week, so stay tuned.
What are you using?
Not Windex, it's Prepsol.
Prepsol. Is that your own formula or?
No, that's what it's called. Prepsol.
Oh, is it just the Mexican and you're recycling a empty bottle?
Yes. It comes in like a little gallon tin container thing. So.
Let's see it.
Ba-ba-da-ba-ba.
Oh, Prep All.
Everyone pronounces it Prepsol. So I'll just go with it.
It's like Vaporu.
Yeah.
When I realized that it's vapor rub, I was mind blown. It's like there's no way, and I still refuse it, so Vaporu it is.
Yeah. He removes stuff.
So again, after you clean this up, then the next step is adding primer.
Mm-hmm.
And then after primer?
More sanding. And then maybe paint. Or maybe more primer. Maybe more Bondo.
Mm. You can put Bondo over primer?
Yeah.
Huh.
And you wipe it with your tack rag. This removes any little dust specks or junk on the surface.
Is that like a dry rag or what is it?
I think it's like a rag that's like soaked in glue or something, because that's what it feels like. Like if you don't wear gloves with it, you can feel your hands, like your skin sticking to itself.
Where did you buy that?
It's the paint store.
Oh, you can't get that like at an auto store?
Yeah, AutoZone has these too.
Get in the zone. Oh, copyright.
Not a sponsor.
What is your #1 favorite auto shop, I guess?
Dealer?
Dealer?
For like replacement parts?
Just in general.
If it's replacement parts, you should be going to the dealer whenever possible. But for everyday junk, I like O'Reilly's better.
Why is that? Because it's O'Reilly's. Because it's Irish.
Because I'm Irish. Yeah. I am in fact not Irish. Not even the slightest percent.
But I am.
The irony. O'Reilly's has like better infrastructure set up to where like if they don't have something, they can usually get it to you like the same day. Whereas AutoZone, if they don't have something, you're waiting like a week at least.
So we're hearing some static while using the tack rag. I can't see your hairs, but apparently they're sticking up from all the static of him rubbing it down. You can hear it.
It wasn't from this, it was from the prep saw. So I got our new Harbor Freight gun that I bought for primer. When you get these, you need to take them apart really well and make sure you clean everything because they like cover all the metal parts in grease, which is just great for painting things. So you gotta make sure that it's really clean in there. And we'll see how it works. I've never used one of these for paint before. So we're using some high build 2K primer, and whenever you're mixing 2-part paints you want to check what the ratio is. So like on this one it's 4:1, and that corresponds to your little mixing cup. And what I always do is always mark out the right area. That way you make sure you're not looking at the wrong thing when you're pouring your paint and screw up your ratio. Should probably mix that one before we open it. I hate pouring this stuff. There's no graceful way to do it. Okay, so we got a couple layers of high build primer on there now, and it makes a huge difference just it being one color because you can really see like how good the surface is that you've been working with, and it also kind of shows off your mistakes more, which is what you want. You want to be able to see like how you've been doing basically, because it's hard to, especially if you're using different kinds of Bondo and stuff that are different colors, it's hard to really see what you're doing. And even when they're the same color, if your mixture is just a little off, the color, like the shade of it will be a little off, and it ends up being like this mosaic looking thing that every fiberglass piece looks like before you paint it. But it's a bigger deal on this left side because I'm not super happy with how it came out. And I think that's because I used a bunch of different kinds of foam on this side, because this was my experiment side. And then once I kind of more or less knew what I was doing, I did that side. And I used like 3 different kinds of foam on this one. And I think that's where I screwed up, is that like I couldn't see the line as clearly because of all the different colors. And then on top of that, the Bondo was a couple of different colors too, which wasn't helping. So if you look at this side, the line isn't great, but it's not too bad either. This side came out absolutely beautiful. I don't know how I pulled that off, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. There's still some pinholes and stuff that I was expecting the primer to fill in, but it didn't. So I'm not sure why, but I'm just gonna keep sanding a little bit more. I have to sand the whole thing now, because the middle part was already pretty good and we didn't mess with any of that. But whenever you have like a large area of Bondo, you want to put a few layers of primer over that first, because it's going to soak in that paint. And if you didn't do that, it would show through all the way through to your clear. Like you'd have like a visible spot where like you could tell that the paint got sucked in more. So in these kind of cases, you really do want to use primer or sealer or something before you start painting the whole thing. Learned that on the rear over fenders on last time. But yeah, now I can go ahead and sand the whole thing, and I guess try and fill in some of the little pinholes with like spot putty or something. And then we're gonna primer the whole thing, maybe sand a little more, probably sand a little more. And then maybe we'll be ready for some base coat. Yay! Yeah. Look at that.
Young